morning. How are you?
What's going on, Austin? How are you?
There he is. Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm excited to talk to you all. My name is Austin Pothast. I'm the director of sales on the team. Mike Perna is our CEO. And, this is the real estate Q&A. We've been doing this, and I always start this. We've been doing this every single week since COVID, and every single Saturday morning, 10 a.m. And it's a great opportunity for you folks to ask any questions that you have, ask anything that you want, anything real estate related. And I got to tell you, man, like no topic is taboo. We'll get you an answer. Anyhow, anything good going on in your world?
Actually, my mother just sent me a text. I don't know how you attract such fabulous people to the Perna team, but I'm impressed.
Oh,
yeah. And here's what happened. And I'll get into it. So I had an uncle that had passed away yesterday.
Oh, Mike, sorry to hear. Yeah.
Thank you. And I was on the phone with Mike Cantrell just a little bit ago on an appointment that I was helping him out with. And I mentioned that. I said, hey, my mom's calling and I got to talk to her because this is what's going on and whatnot. And she and Mike took the time to send my mother a text, which was very nice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it just happened. Like I just was on the phone with him about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was nice. It was nice.
It is really nice. In any given organization, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's a family or a church or a company, or there's always unsung heroes. You know what I mean? Guys just getting the work done, guys and gals just getting the work done. Mike Cantrell is one of those people for us.
100%.
Does an awesome job with our clients. Really great guy, nice guy, big heart. At what point didn't cut his hair for the entirety of COVID and look like White Snake, but he got it trimmed up. We're good.
Yeah. No, he's good. He's making it happen. He's probably watching right now.
Yeah. Morning, Mike. Yeah, cool. That is really nice.
No, it is nice. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about kind of a gradual then sudden kind of shift that's happening in real estate at this moment.
Yeah.
At this moment.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that we dive into it a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of dive right in, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do it. By the way, if you guys have questions, always throw them in the thing, and we're going to get off on a tangent. So, buckle up. Here we go. All right, what you got, Mike?
Yeah, bring all your questions, bring all your comments, bring anything you got. Okay, so shifts and things like that. Everything in life seems to happen gradually, then suddenly. Mm-hmm. But there are always clues, right? So the market is starting to shift. And one of the clues that I had was 2 weeks ago, I was at a conference in Houston. Asked around the water cooler was, hey, are you seeing anything change in your market? Are you seeing a number of offers per property go down? Are you seeing showings go down? Are you seeing, whatever that looks like, right? About a week, I saw a friend of mine post that he was a little nervous, and it was a joking post, but he's like that feeling you get when you only get 6 showing requests in the first 90 minutes of putting a property active.
Yeah.
And he was expecting more like a dozen or 15 or even 20. Yeah. Right. And this is a gentleman in the Pennsylvania area. But all of these little clues have kind of made me start looking at the market. Right. In addition to that, anybody that I'm working with personally on those Save Search, I get alerts on when there are any changes to the status of homes that they have saved as favorites or homes that they've viewed at least a couple of times. So I can kind of stay on top of that as well. Right. And typically speaking, I get a price status change. Typically speaking, I get a ton of status changes that say, hey, this property has accepted an offer. And I'll get 1, 2, maybe 3 status changes that have to do with changing the price, like a price reduction. And just in the last 2 or 3 days, I've gotten 20 of those. Right. Mm-hmm. So that is a huge increase in numbers of sellers that went onto the market, did not get the price, and then had to make an adjustment there. Right. Yeah. So that kind of leads me to kind of the culmination of all of this. I think we're seeing a market shift. Mm-hmm. I think the market even out just a little bit. The numbers are going to keep coming out in the news. We're going to see, and I know what we're going to see in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We're going to see a whole bunch of stats on how the median sales price across the US went from 350, 300 to about 366 that we're going to see. I know that that's the right number, and I know the news outlets are going to pick that up. But one thing I always do know is the news outlets are always 6 to 8 weeks behind what's actually happening because the data hasn't caught up yet, right? Most real estate data runs in monthly cycles, not minute cycles, right? Our data runs more cycle because we see everything on such a large scale with our properties. We know what's happening in the market. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, some of it's anecdotal, right? It's like, but
yeah,
you start to feel it. We do enough business where it's like you really can start to pick up on trends.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's really interesting. And you know what's interesting is you said the market's shifting, and I agree with you. I think we're starting to shift, and it's happening very quickly. Now, not all market shifts are created equal. And can I talk a little bit about that, and then pass it back to you?
Please.
Because here's the scoop, guys. Like, you think of like a roller coaster. It's like it goes up, and then like at Cedar Point, the thing goes down. And sometimes we think of market shifts like that, where it's like, whoa, everything's falling off a cliff. And actually, what typically happens when any kind of market shifts, like any kind of asset market, it could be stocks, it could be whatever it is, right? It could be interest rates, it could be bond prices, it could be all kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
What happens is like a shift will happen. Maybe we're humming along right here, and a shift will happen up or a shift will happen down, and it's like it won't be a tank; it'll just be like a quick like step down, and like a new range will be established, right? Like if you think about it's almost like what's the EKG thing, like your heartbeat. It's like there's a certain range, right? Beep, beep, beep. So like my guess is what we're seeing is we kind of crested over the top, maybe a little bit. We either flattened or maybe stepped down just a slight bit. I actually think it's probably closer to a flatten than it is a big drop. But anyway, let's pretend it even dropped down a little bit, and we're just establishing a new range. Now, what might happen is 3 months from now, the new range gets established higher. I mean, it's like you don't know, but I think we're just kind of establishing a new comfortability, and a lot of this is driven in the housing side of things by affordability.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because we've seen wages increase about 3.8% year over year. But we've seen housing values increase over 20% in most markets. In our market, almost 23%, 22.8.
Yeah.
So and you're right about that. So the affordability level, like we were able to stretch that Band-Aid pretty far with the decrease in interest rates, right? We were able to allow buyers to pay more money and yet still get a better payment for a home. But you can only stretch that Band-Aid so far before it breaks. And I think we're at that moment where we're looking at affordability and saying, okay, this home that a year ago was $325, today is $390. I can't do $390. I can do $375, but I can't do $390. But look at the other side. It's not that the sellers themselves are losing any money because they're still up $50,000. They're just $65,000.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're not losing anything. They're just gaining a smidge less.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. Like the thing that impacts affordability, like there's kind of three things that, I think there's three that come to my head very quickly. There's probably way more things than that, but one is the price of the home. I mean, that obviously impacts affordability. Secondly is the interest rate of the home, right? Like in right now, we've been humming so low for so long. It's like there's nowhere else to go. Home prices have just hit a moment where the balance is starting to just like there's nowhere else to go. The interest rate and the price of the home are just stagnating. And so the other thing that can impact it is wages going up or down. And I actually think that wages just haven't caught up to the economy. That's my opinion. And I'll tell you why I think that. There's a lot of employers and there's a lot of small business owners that I'm friends with. Like, we'll even, and again, it's anecdotal, but like, anytime I talk to a small business owner, guy that owns the oil shop, guy that does the lawnmower company, the guy that does owns the party store, right? Whatever it is, right? Guy or gal that does those things. they would say, "Oh, I can't find workers. I can't find workers. I can't find workers." And right now, there's a narrative around that where they're even saying, "Well, it's because the government's giving people money and da da da." Like my intent isn't to go into politics, but it's interesting because I can't find workers at some point actually means I can't find workers for the price that I want to pay.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I actually think employers haven't caught up to wages in some aspect.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And you know, there's always a lot of things out there that are moving and shaking and changing. And again, I don't want to go too deep into politics, because honestly, I don't really care, but I will speak to some of the facts around it.
Yeah.
So as an example, you know, I was very curious what would happen when some of the COVID relief would let off. Would that give us back some of the workers that we needed? Right.
Yeah.
And now we have 6 states that have effectively stopped COVID relief, and it's been over 30 days.
Yep.
Right. And now the study came out. The New York Times did a great article on this the other day, showing that yes, there was a temporary bump in number of people, and they did the study through Indeed, you know, which is a huge place to both for employers to post jobs and for people to find jobs, right? And it showed that for about 10 days there was a temporary increase in number of people looking for jobs. They also found that demographic was the 18 to 25 demographic, right?
Yep.
And they also found that the majority of the people that were doing that were people either in college or in some sort of a trade school, and the jobs they were looking for were part-time, let's get by jobs.
Yep.
Which they had that money replaced by the COVID money, right? Because the COVID money is you know, it's a reasonable sum of money, but you know, you're not raising a family on it.
No.
Right. But if you're a college kid, you know, and you're getting $1,000 a month, or you're getting $1,500 a month, it's probably what you need to get by. You know, it's a little bit of pocket money, right? It gets your cell phone bill paid. It gets the essentials kind of covered. But now these guys have to go and do the DoorDashes or the Instacarts or whatever that looks like, because that money's going away. But what did not happen was this mass push into, like, of new employees going into the market, which is very interesting. So we saw some push, but not levels. Did not impact it.
I think wages are going to catch up. I actually think we're going to see another little boost in wages. Can I tell you why I think that?
And I'm on that because I don't know that that's the case.
You're going to disagree with me?
Yeah. Look, all right, let's do 3.
Yeah. All right.
3. Okay.
Mine's anecdotal. Here's why. I call it the McDonald's effect.
Sure.
If McDonald's is going to pay someone $15 an hour because they can't find workers because supply and demand, then guess what happens to Costco, which in turn, guess what happens to the next company and the next company. And that means that if you need somebody with any kind of given level of skill, 5 years ago, you might have been able to pay them $15 or $18 an hour. And now I think the cost of a skilled person, like, how about this? You got to pay someone $50,000 for something you might have 3 years ago paid them 40 for. And by the way, it's not a gotta. It's just anecdotal. But the other example I have is, like, my sister-in-law was working for a nonprofit. She got laid off because of budget cuts, and that's just what happens in that space. And she's been out looking for new employment in both the private and nonprofit sector. But anyway, she's seeing, like, when she applies for things, like the people that are being aggressive about finding talent, right? The people that are being aggressive about finding talent are bumping up their wages. So to me, it's anecdotal. It's a supply and demand conversation is what I'm seeing. I call it again, if McDonald's is starting to pay you $15 an hour, everybody else has got to follow suit, or you don't get the skilled workers anyhow.
Great.
So that's why I think it's going to catch up. And Go ahead. What's your argument the other way?
No. And I want to hear the and.
Well, the and is that, in my opinion, could turn on a dime, because I think if you're looking for new employment, like, right now is the sweet spot, because what's about to happen is a lot of money is going to go away, and there's going to be influx of people looking for work. So it's kind of, and again, I don't know this. I'm not an economist. It's just what it feels like. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if the workers are out there with or without the money.
Really?
Yeah, looking at those couple of states that were over 30 days out from them canceling out, the COVID payments. Again, a minor bump, McDonald's jobs, not professional jobs, not professional services. I mean, these were not engineers that were like, I make $100,000 a year at General Motors. I'm going to decide not to work because I'm getting $1,200 a month.
So you don't think that $100,000 a year employers are hiring as aggressively as the lower side of things? Is that what you're saying?
Oh no, I think they're hiring aggressively, but I don't think the COVID money going away affects that. It doesn't push an influx of people into that market.
I agree. On that market, no way. I agree.
Yeah. I think on the McDonald's market, on the DoorDash market, on the Uber market, sure. We're going to see a push. Absolutely. Your restaurants are going to start employing more people. Absolutely. For sure. Yeah.
Well, then you're making my case for me on wages. It's matter of fact, even during COVID, like when we would analyze that data, it was like an economic recovery of two different thresholds. It was like the restaurant worker and the service worker was like, they got hammered, but your professional white collar jobs, it was like they instantly recovered. It was like instant recovery. In their wages have increased.
Well, and again, I don't want to make this a political thing, but looking at both the data from history, which just negated everything that came before it. And I'll tell you, here's a little bit of my concern, and I'll just be honest with you. Okay? Yeah. So 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, we had this concept of trickle-down economics, right?
Yeah.
Which honestly, in the 50s, and there have been hundreds of papers written on this, and we've got decades of research done on this at this point, and people far smarter than myself. But the general consensus by the economic community, by economists, is yes, that could have worked in the 40s, 50s, or 60s. But by the time we got past the 70s, into the 70s and past it, and then into the 80s, it was an outmoded concept. And here's the difference. In the 40s, 50s, and 60s, right, companies were a lot smaller, not as multinational, right? And CEOs, on average, were making 15 to 25 times your average worker, right? They were a lot closer in level. In a lot of companies, you could walk over and talk to the guy who's the CEO, right? Nobody's walking over and talking to Mary Barra.
No, there's probably 3 locked doors before you'd even get close. Yeah.
Yep. And so this is not an opinion. This is just what happens.
Yeah.
So when you do a major tax reduction to a company like that, they're taking the money. And we've seen this happen 4 times in 35 years. They're taking the money and they're bonusing out the C-suite.
Yeah.
Right. That's just what happens.
Yeah.
Right. When taxes went down in the Reagan era, we did not, in fact, see your average worker either make more money or General Motors hire more people. Neither of those things happened. It just didn't. I mean, it's just fact. When in the last down market, we saw $700 billion given to the banks to shore them up. We did not see the banks actually open branches or hire people or do any of that. But we did see the CEO of Wells Fargo get a $45 million bonus that year.
Yeah. Good to be him.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't see the tax reductions that have happened over these last, let's call it 10 years, have a positive effect. My fear is, and I'm going to land this plane. My fear is if our taxes go up, the companies, your middle of the road companies, your small businesses, those are the guys that really get hammered. Like myself, and I'll just put it out there. Like I'm in a real good place for taxes right now. But if they go up, from where they're at to even halfway to where the current proposal is, I'm not hiring anybody for the next year.
Yeah.
Because I already checked Uncle Sam instead.
Yeah.
And I think if we see that kind of a tax change, then we're going to see employment and hiring slow down in the middle businesses, right? And I'm talking small business owners like myself.
Yeah.
See some small business owners say, okay, we're good. We're done. We're going to hang up the towel and close shop. Because that's happened before. And that's my general fear. And I think there's a sweet spot there where, yeah, companies like a General Motors or a Ford or a Chrysler or, the casinos or, big tech, right? Apple, all of those companies need to pay more taxes because right now they're about zero. Like Jeff Bezos.
They're kind of literally zero. Yeah.
Jeff Bezos paid less in taxes than I did last year. Is that the right thing? Probably not.
I wonder so often, Mike, if we're not heading for a Ma Bell moment with Amazon where it just gets broken up. I don't
something and that might happen. And there's a story to that story as well, because we're playing, like, unlike the Ma Bell era, we're also playing on an international level, not just a national level. And you've got Alibaba sitting out there.
I know.
And for those that don't know, Jack Ma created Alibaba, which is essentially Amazon, but in China, India, and a couple of other places like that, which is where Amazon was expecting their growth to come from. If anybody saw their earnings report coming out of Q2, it was disappointing. And the new CEO, Jack, whatever his name is, says, yep, used to it, guys. Earning reports are going to look like this for the next 4 or 5 quarters because they're not seeing the growth internationally that they thought they were going to see, because Alibaba is actually bigger than Amazon.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I think it may not be the best move to break up Amazon.
I know.
Because we got to take the fight international. And the only way that we can do that is through our corporations.
Yeah, we're tooling up that way. Yeah.
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 You bring up your tangents, but I mean, like, putting a fine point on it.
Yeah.
Do I think, Mary Barra needs $100 million salary a year, which is effectively what she's getting between the salary and the stock? Does she need that a year? And would a tax reduction or a tax hike truly affect General Motors? Probably not. If I got to pay $70,000 more in taxes next year, then yes, I'm not making that higher.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, $70,000 in more taxes to this company is a big deal. $1 million in more taxes to drop in the bucket compared to the revenues and earnings, and you can see that through their share price. Yeah,
the other thing, the massive companies get a lot of those breaks, but the reality is that, but I don't know what it is. 3 out of 4. It's probably more like 9 out of 10. To be honest with you, 9 out of 10 of people work for a small business. It's like, it's not. Most people don't work for GM or for a Chase Bank or what. You know what I mean? Most people work for a small business.
100%.
That's interesting.
100%. And let's be real, Austin. I mean, if these if or I will hire more people because I want my business to grow, because there's more market share for us to get.
Yeah.
But with General Motors, that's the other side of the issue, right? That's part of the reason. Okay, so there we go. That was the point I was missing. So the car market, right? It's not going to go up. It's not going to go down either. Number of cars being created and sold are the number of cars being created. The only way that General Motors, let's just say, is going to hire more people is if they go from 8.8 million cars per year sold, which is where they're at, to 11.2 million cars per year sold. They have to go and get more market share to be able to hire more people. Putting more money in their pocket does not make them hire more people. Selling more product makes them hire more people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So where General Motors needs to go is they need to build a better product to attract consumers away from, Ford and Toyota and whatever. Right?
Yep.
And so anyway. So,
by the way, there's just a squeeze going on. You're talking about it from the standpoint of a business owner, but there's a squeeze going on with all of us. And that's kind of the one leg that I didn't talk about with affordability. So we talked about from a housing affordability, what interest rates are, what the home price is, what you're earning. But like what everything else costs around you impacts it pretty significantly as well. So I actually, even though I think we're going to see a wage increase, now that you're even saying that, I think it's probably going to get kind of wiped out by the fact that, gas is more expensive and your groceries are more expensive and the things that you're buying are more expensive. And every time you turn around, it's like an iPhone now costs $1,200 compared to $600.
$1,200.
It's crazy. I know. It's like a computer.
Really, guys? My Surface Pro doesn't cost $1,200.
I know. It's crazy.
It's because, I'm a little on the cheap side and I bought the lesser of the Surface Pros.
Yeah.
I bought the one I needed, not the one I wanted.
There it is. There it is. You just bought the one you wanted. But anyway, I don't know. It's all just interesting how it all plays in. So
it really is. And then the last, I'm going to put one more point out there.
Yeah.
Looking into the future of what this kind of looks at, essentially 3 options.
Yeah.
We've got taxes could remain the same, right? Which, frankly, I think the dude that's out there hoofing it, working and getting it done, has not gotten the tax reduction that they should, and that's the one that would put the most money back in the economy. Somebody like my dad, who's an electrician, right, that works at General Motors or worked at General Motors. Like, if that guy gets a tax reduction, he's going to turn around and he's going to go to the movies. And when he goes to the movies, there's a guy sitting there that's got to get him popcorn. And then that guy's going to go out and buy the iPhone. And then that money going in a circle, that's how you propel the economy, not giving a tax cut to Apple, right?
Yeah, 70% of our economy is just the stuff you and I buy. It's like,
It is. It's the services and products that we buy.
Put the money in the hands of different people is what you're saying. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And then second, which, again, not going political with this, but I'm just going to be completely candid. I think it's super smart because we don't live in a silo. We haven't for 40 years. We actually haven't since we technically have not lived in a silo in the United States since the end of World War I, right? And because of the world community and us entering back into the world community, that's what caused that Great Recession. And there's a whole lot to unpack there with history, and I'm not going into it. But I will say this. Having a world business tax that is similar or same across multiple countries, I think that's genius.
Who enforces it? Where does the money go?
The International Monetary Fund enforces it. The money goes back to the respective nations, and then the nations are empowered to police as well. So there's the EU, there's the International Monetary Fund, and the United States. Those are kind of the big 3. Well, in China, those are the kind of big 4 players there, right? And this 15% tax of what they're talking about. So let me paint this picture, right? So where's Apple headquartered out of?
San Francisco, for all intents and purposes. Palo Alto.
Sure. Yep. They've got mailboxes there, but their actual headquarters is Dublin, Ireland.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Amazon, Dublin, Ireland. Google, all of them.
Yep.
Because it's a 7.5% corporate tax.
Yeah.
Versus in the United States, we're around 18%. Some of Europe is 15%. Some of Europe is 25%. Some of Europe is up at 40%. Right? Even China, if you actually break out, and yes, it's a communist country, I get that. But if you break it out, they're kind of this weird hybrid, and their tax is 25%.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, even look at what's going on in Hong Kong. By doing some sort of a standardized tax, we get back things like Apple. Right? Like economists had, and you can Google this, economists have put papers out there that if we go into some sort of a world tax, we are actually one of the big 4 or 5 winners, to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars back every year. Because we don't live in a silo. Because as a business owner, if I'm Apple, right? If I'm not Steve Jobs, the other guy, you know what I'm talking about.
Wozniak or whatever.
Yeah. If I'm Tim Cook and I'm going to look and I'm sitting there, I'm looking at, okay, one of the best ways I can increase. Well, there's only 3 ways he really increases revenue, right?
Yeah.
Sell more, product like phones, sell more services, or pay less taxes.
Yeah.
So heck yes, I'm going to move over to Dublin, Ireland. Why wouldn't I? That's part of my job as CEO, to look down that line.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Paying the least.
So you're talking about even in the playing field.
That's all I'm saying. I think it's a great idea, frankly.
God, I go instantly cynical. It's like okay, so where's the representation? It's like that's the first thing I go.
Yeah.
It's like then then the incentive for corruption increases significantly.
Yeah.
God, it's really interesting stuff. The ways in which the economy is going to change over our lifetime is just and continued globalization of the whole thing.
And really, guys, it's just the truth. As much as we might have an opinion for or against, It just is what it is.
Yeah, we're just constantly looking at this stuff and trying to. By the way, the start of this conversation was about price adjustments on listings, right? And
yeah.
I mean, these are the conversations that we're having to try to figure out, like, what's going on in this economy. How do we staff appropriately? How do we like we're trying to, Mike, you do a tremendous job of this, and we get into some really interesting conversations. So it's kind of, you guys are getting behind the curtain from our craziness. But anyway, it's like trying to figure out what's going on so that we can figure out what we're coaching to, figure out what we're hiring to, figure out where we're spending dollars to. It's all just part of it, you know?
Yeah.
And so Mike and I do a lot of, gosh, I'm really letting you be. Mike and I do a lot of conversations like this because it's like, okay, if this is the direction that we're going to head with our messaging, we need to make sure that the team is educated enough and heading in that right direction and knowing how to have those conversations or talking these narratives and things. And it's just, but all we're doing is pulling this data and trying to figure out what's going on. So it's really interesting. So okay, so getting back to price reductions or price adjustments.
Yeah. So let's get back to it. Yeah, and that's the right place to go, right? So bringing this all back local, so to speak. We're in this place where wage growth is not keeping up with home values. The interest rates on mortgages are not going down any further, which means that buyers cannot spend more. That's caught up to itself.
Yeah.
And we still have this narrative, unfortunately, and that this is only because and there's a reason for it, and I'll get to it. We still have this narrative that's being put out on two different levels that home values are going up and up and up and up and up and up still. So what we should do is wherever the last guy sold their house for, let's add 10% to it.
Yeah.
And by the way, the last guy sold their house a week ago. And we're going to.
So let's just try to push it. Let's keep trying to push it. So affordability is falling off the map a little bit.
Now here's the reality. Two outlets of information where people are seeing this, where sellers are getting this information, unfortunately, are both untimely and honestly, what they're doing. And here's what I mean. One, the actual news outlets are untimely because they can't keep up because the data is too far back, right? And that's why we have things like, right? We don't have daily earning reports that are published and put out there, right? Because you can have a bad day. Like you have a storm, Somerset has a bad day, and you can't use a day where there's a thunderstorm as a predictor of what's going to happen the other 364 days.
Yeah.
You just can't do it, right? That's why we have not a daily. Here, that's how the news outlets treat it, right? So all that data for June is compiled. And then at some point about the end of the first week of July, we start seeing the stories surface, right? July was a good July. We still saw home values tick up a little bit. So we're going to see all of that go out in the next 7 days. But the part that wasn't told was the last 2 weeks, showing traffic across the board is down 50-60%.
Yeah.
And part of it's seasonal. Part of it is people that have kids that were out there beating the street. They've either found the property or they decided to put the move off for a year because they didn't want to move their kids at some point mid-year or into the school year, right?
Yeah.
Part of it is, hey, a lot of these buyers are actually found homes, And then the second point of it is, if that's the case, if we're no longer at a 10-to-1, 10 buyers for each listing, if we're more like a 3-to-1 or a 2-to-1, which is I think where we're at, then the home values won't rise as fast.
Yep.
But we're not going to see the news publish any of that until September, maybe even October.
Yeah.
What we will hear is how hot the market is, how crazy the market is. The second part of that is real estate agents, right? So real estate agents themselves, on average, sell about 4 homes a year.
That's it, ladies and gentlemen.
They don't have enough. I mean, that's not enough experience. That's just not enough experience to be able to predict the market, in my opinion. And what I mean by that is, if I had a listing in May and it went bonkers and it had 25 offers, and I'm talking to a seller today, I have a knowledge gap and an experience gap. And there's a very large time gap because markets can move that fast between May and now. And in fact, they have. So the data that we're looking at is we're looking at 80 to 90 sales every month. We're looking at around 3 properties sold per day right now. So we see this stuff click in real time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then part of the benefit of working with us is not only do we see the stuff click in real time, but we also get a nice national snapshot because of some of the programs that we're members of.
Yeah.
So I get to sit there and have a conversation with another guy that sells 100 homes a month, another guy that sells 200 homes a month, and a guy that sells 50 homes a month. So our production together is like, let's say 500 homes a month between the 5 of us. And we're like, okay, that's huge. And
this is what we're seeing.
This is what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And you're seeing it in your market, you're seeing it in your market, and I'm seeing it in my market. So no, this is not just a market fluke. This is a total.
It's happening. Yeah. Now, by the way,
right.
It's a total thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how we stay ahead of it with our clients. And that's where we're at right now is, hey guys, you know, if the guy down the road sold last month at 400, it doesn't mean that we get to ask 500. It means we probably get to ask 400.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is still way more than the 325 or 350 a year ago.
Yeah.
And that's all it is just keeping up with the times and those changes.
Yeah. Yeah, we're battling a little bit expectations. Like when we're having conversations with sellers because they saw the house down the road and they keep on reading narratives that the market's going crazy, and so they saw that house sell down the road for 350, and so they're thinking, let's price it at 375 and see what happens.
Yeah.
One of the challenges that we have is real estate is selling real estate or selling a home is different than selling just about anything else. And I'll explain to you why. I call it the old Ford F-150 on the side of the road. Okay. Yeah. So if I wanted to sell my F-150, what I would do is I would put it up maybe on Facebook Marketplace. I'd put it, on Craigslist or Auto Trader, and I'd put it out on the side of the road. And I put a sign on it that says 5,500 OBO or best offer, right?
Yeah.
And then what when you're selling that old F-150 is you put 5,500 because you actually want 5,000 or actually want 4,800, and someone's going to come in and negotiate you. So you price higher, right? Now the truth is that the when you're selling your old F-150, if you price it like that, it doesn't impact the amount of eyeballs, the amount of people that see that you're selling it. Does that make sense? And the problem that you run into real estate with that strategy is this. So like, let's pretend that your home, you're thinking to yourself, I would accept 350, but let's price it at 375 and they can always negotiate me down, right?
Yeah.
The challenge with that, Mike, is when you price it at 375, here's what you're doing. You're instantly assuring that less people will view your property, which means you're going to have less leverage in the negotiation. And here's why. Mm-hmm. Your average home buyer, you guys, is sitting there on their couch on Zillow or Realtor.com, or we have a bunch of websites that people are on, and they're looking at a home 12, 18 months before they move. Like any of you guys that are planning to move in the next 2 years, you're doing it. Any of you guys that just moved in the last year or so, you did it. It's like you start looking online to get a feel of things before you ever even step foot in the house. As a matter of fact, we track that kind of stuff. It's about a year, 6 months to a year at least, yep. Sometimes even 18 months, where like people are viewing on our websites before we actually get them physically inside of a home. Does that make sense? And so what happens is that your prospective buyer, if you're selling a home, has access to more data than they ever have any time in the history of selling real estate or any other asset. They have more data. And what that means is that they know the market cold. So if you go on the market at 375 and they're seeing that nicer homes or similar homes are selling for 350, guess what they're not even going to do?
Look at it.
They're not even going to walk in the door.
No.
Like next. Now, last I checked, this doesn't always happen. But last I checked, buyers need to physically walk inside of homes before they'll purchase homes. So you can't just throw the $5,500 or best offer. What you've got to do is you've got to price it appropriate to the market.
Yep.
So we're kind of seeing that. Where sellers are pushing Now, look, we're having this conversation, but like, and I think our people do an amazing job at this. And the challenge is that other agents that, because they're only doing 4 sales a year, aren't having that conversation. And so you're
Right.
seeing things priced above the market, which means that buyers aren't walking through because they're fatigued, right? From the standpoint of from an affordability standpoint, based on interest rates, based on home prices, based on wages, based on the cost of gas and everything else, right? See how this narrative all comes in together? And so the challenge is they're not walking into the house, so you've got to price appropriately. What's interesting is pricing a property, Mike, and tell me if you disagree. Pricing a property is actually a function of what's going to get the right amount of people inside of my home so that I could actually sell the home. That's the actual balancing act of what we're doing with pricing. Agreed?
And I agree with you, and I 100% agree with you, and to an extent, if you're working with a skilled technician, not just an agent, but a skilled technician, I would wager that in some cases, and I'm talking some markets, not all markets, but some of the price segments, if you underprice a home 10%, you'll still end up with more money because of the way the skilled technician operates.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. It's skilled, and I did a video on this that I actually got picked up by some press in Kalamazoo, of all places, right? Not that we operate in Kalamazoo, but they thought it was a great video, and so they ran it, like some news outlet ran it out there. But there are a lot that get pressured, or they pressure sellers into accepting an offer the very first day a home goes on the market, right?
Yeah.
And a hot property, and there are 35 showings and all of the things and all of the people, and this is a property that's going to get 10, 15, 20 offers. And an offer comes in and it's great and it's at asking price or whatever that looks like, right? And then the agent says, oh my gosh, look, I've got this great offer, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. We should probably just take it. And that's not the right answer. There are 6 different negotiation tactics used in multiple offer situations by agents representing sellers. And I'm going to tell you, like, being on both sides of it for so long, 99% of the time, they're not used at all by other agents. And it sucks. And that's where, going back to it, that's where a skilled technician can come back and get more money, because there are just different tactics to get that done.
Yep.
I mean, and one of them being, like, I had a sale in Farmington Hills where the roof was actually falling off the house. Yep. And we went and got a quote on it. It was $14,000 for a roof. And my seller was going to do the roof before we went on the market. And I said, nope, we're not in that market right now.
Yep.
Just go on the market. So we did. Now, when the guy came back from his home inspection, right, we had an amazing cash offer that came in. He wanted $12,000 off for the price of the roof.
Mm-hmm.
We ended up negotiating him down over the course of a week to $1,000 off. So a roof that my seller probably should have done 2 or 3 years previous to that, he got away with only paying $1,000 instead of $14,000, which is what the roof quote came in.
Yeah,
he really should have done that roof. The shingles were falling off the roof, to be fair. But again, we had priced it appropriately. We had gotten 6 offers, right? And so when the inspection came back, I had leverage.
Yep.
And where I made my money for that seller, or where I made the seller the money for the seller, where my value came in was, again, skilled technician to know where to put that property to make sure we still hit top value, yet we had 6 offers. So when this problem that we knew about was going to come up, we can go back and fight it off. And that's why you hire the skilled technician, not the guy that's just going to slap it on the market and hope for the best.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what most agents do. And I can see that because of the number of price reductions we're getting ourselves into nowadays, right? And all that means is, just again, I feel like I'm on a soapbox on this, but what that means is Mr. and Mrs. Seller called up a bunch of agents and said, hey, who's willing to list my property at this price that there's no evidence for?
Yeah, they're just trying to see what they can get for it. Correct.
Yeah, and up until we're no longer okay with that.
Yep.
Now that's going to hurt a seller's bottom line, because what's the first thing a buyer says to themselves when they see a property in this market that's been on the market for 30 or 60 days?
Yeah, what's wrong with the house?
What's wrong with the house?
Yeah.
And what's the second thing? How much lower can we go?
Yeah.
How much can we knock this seller off their pedestal?
Yep.
Yeah. Versus, let's say, you know, we've got one that went live yesterday. We're doing the open house today. I've gotten 3 calls on it already, and I'm not even on the listing, right? We priced it, and it's one of Mark's, and we priced it perfectly, and we are going to get a half a dozen offers, and that seller's going to get more money.
Yeah.
And it could have been priced 10,000 higher. And I looked at it myself because I was really curious because I got 3 calls on it, right? And it very easily could have been priced 10,000 higher. And had that happened, the seller probably would have ended up with less money.
Yeah.
Because it would have knocked out, instead of getting 3 to 5 offers, it would have knocked us back to 1 or even worse, 0.
Yeah.
And then midweek next week, we got to do a price adjustment to where it should be, which is where it is right now. But still, I mean, now we've lost the momentum.
Yeah. If I'm selling my property, ready?
Yep.
If I'm selling my property and I chose to do this strategy, right? I chose to do a strategy of like, let me just price it up and see if somebody pays it. I mean, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yep.
Here's what I'm doing. If that thing hasn't sold within 10 days, if that home hasn't sold within 10 days, I'm immediately looking at the price because he's right. What you don't want to do is you don't want to be sitting on the market for 90 days because people are going to go, what's wrong with it? So what you want to do is like, okay, I've been on the market for 10 days. The market's not willing to pay this price. I got to come off that price.
That's it. That's it.
And the truth is, all of us, you, me, all of us have made 20%
Mm-hmm.
over the last, I'd say 18 months since the beginning of the pandemic. You know how like, not only does the data show it, but it's like, we've all made 20%.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, would you rather adjust your price by 5 or 10% and actually move forward with a good transaction that works well for both people? Or would you rather sit on the market, or would you rather wait for the market to bloat, right, with a bunch of listings? Because the more listings are on the market, the more it starts to swing to a buyer's market.
Yeah.
We're already starting to experience it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll use my own personal example here. I've got a condo, one of my rental properties I'm putting on the market.
Yeah.
I bought it, I don't know, almost 2 years ago. It's up in value 40,000.
Yeah.
The reality is there's a price that I would love to get that's around 5 or 10,000 beyond where the average is. And there's 2 properties sitting on the market right now in that complex that are at that price. And as much as I may feel like my property is superior because I redid the bathroom, kitchen, I redid all this stuff, the reality is it's not. It's not. I look at the comps. It's no different than the other top 3 properties that sold. So I'm literally just going to price it 5,000 below the ones that sold, undercutting the 2 on the market by 15,000. I'm going to get 3 offers. And I'm going to sell that thing, and I'm going to walk off and be happy with it. And that's what's going to happen. In my emotionally, I do want to price it that 5 or 10,000 above. Of course I do. I'm a seller. I want the most.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to not allow myself to fall into that trap.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on this one, to be honest, I actually called one of my own agents. And I was like, hey, can you put an eyeball on this to make sure that I'm right? And I wasn't right. I was actually off by 5,000 again. And that was the emotional tax that I was putting onto the property to make the property worth more, but only in my head. And that's okay. Because, you know, I did nice 2-panel doors and the other guys had 6-panel doors. That doesn't add 5,000 in value.
Yeah. It doesn't do anything. Yeah. Sure.
In my head, it did.
Yeah.
But in
actual, feel better about it.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I give you a really interesting scenario that I just went through this morning with a client?
Yeah.
So we were trying to figure out pricing. We're trying to figure out why the home hasn't sold. And Ronnie liked your joke too. What's up, Ronnie?
Yeah.
And so what we did is we started to analyze the price, and I won't go into like the nitty-gritty specifics of it. But we started to analyze the price, and we can look at how many showings are happening within any given price. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I did, so right now this property is priced at 580, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
In Rochester, it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful house. It's like, it's in the best elementary school. It's like, it's, you know,
That's where you want to be.
Or at least, I'm sorry, I don't mean the best elementary school, but like one that's very desirable. Like people like that elementary school, right?
People ask for that by name.
I'm not ranking it. It's just people ask for it. Yeah. But anyway, so it's a 580 price point. And so when we looked at the data of pricing, what we started to look at was how many people are physically out doing showings, walking through doors. And what we did is we looked at basically everything between $500,000 and $600,000, and we looked at $25,000 increments. And what we found is that between $575,000 and $600,000 in that price point, the vast majority of that's where the buyers were viewing properties. It's like the highest percentage of buyers were looking at properties between $575,000 and $600,000 when I looked at between $500,000 and $600,000. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's like for whatever reason, so you can just start to analyze the market. That's what people have an appetite to spend. So I said, okay, well, it seems so on the surface level, it seemed like, hey, we're priced appropriately, like we're priced in the right spot. And so I said, hey, let me do one more activity. And so what I did is I took that same data and then I broke it down into $10,000 increments, right? So how many people are viewing properties from 5 to 510, from 510 to 520, from 520 to 530, so on and so forth, right? And when we actually broke that data down, there was when you looked at between 570 and 579, that was the bulk. When you looked at 580 to 589, it fell off a cliff. It went to half. And by the time you went to 590 to 600, it was almost non-existent. Right? And then that market, by the way, picked back up at 625, seemingly because you get a different 625 to 650, seemingly because you get a different level of home at 650 than you do at 600, and so or at 575. So there was activity, and you could see the appetite for people on what they were willing to pay for a property versus what they were getting. Does that make sense? And what we realized is that by looking at this data, what we realized was like, we might just be 5,000 overpriced. We actually, if all we have to do, I'm hoping, is adjust down to 575 and take a look at that, right? Now, by the way, that's this one example. And sometimes those examples might demonstrate that instead of asking for 575, we should be at 550. But you got to have the data to look at it. Does that make sense? And sometimes I've got clients, Mike, that get bent out of shape when I have a conversation with them about going from 575 to 550. But the reality is that's 5% of the purchase price. 5% at a $500,000 home is $25,000, right? It's the equivalent of a $10,000 adjustment on a $200,000 home. It's like if we were having a $10,000 conversation, we probably wouldn't be having a conversation. We're getting a little more squirrely because we're having a $25,000 conversation. But as a percentage, it's the same thing. Yeah. As a percentage, it's the same thing. And look, I can hope for the best that I can leave it up priced at 575 and maybe eventually it sells, or maybe the market pops up, or maybe it takes 2 years to sell, or maybe it doesn't. Or I could just like, hey, let's look at the data and let's look at the reality and let's like make the adjustment and sell the home. And usually what I find with my sellers, not always, Mike, but usually what I find with my sellers, they're moving for a reason. It's not profit. Yep. Like they want to make money and they want a fair deal, but like usually it's, I need another bedroom. I want to be in these schools. I want to be closer to family. I've got to move for a job. I want to go on a golf course. I want to go, we got 3 women sharing one bathroom right now. It's just not going to work, right? Like people, and I'm being funny, but it's like people move for a reason that's not financially driven. And yet sometimes we get tripped up on dollars over it. It's like, don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Like you're moving for a reason, right? Yep. Anyhow.
And timing plays into money and all of that.
Timing, yeah. There's so many other terms that can make this transaction great for any given client outside of price. It's like be fair about your price and get it back on other things. Occupancy, inspection. It's like we're negotiating on any given transaction, Mike, 20 different things. It's like, and price is only one of them. And I would even argue it's maybe not even the most important. So anyway, sorry, soapbox over. We're like soapboxing you guys today. economic data, soapboxing. Here's the trend we're seeing. It's like, sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah, it's good.
And honestly, I think we did all right.
Hey, we did pretty
All
good.
right, so with our last 4.5 minutes, let's take questions.
You had thoughts in your head that you were going to potentially go out to Chicago this weekend and go to Lollapalooza, and it turns out you didn't.
Might not, who knows?
Who is the biggest act that you wanted to see?
Foo Fighters.
Gosh, they're good.
Oh, and they're so good live. So good live.
Foo Fighters, the band, has got to be 25 years old.
At least.
Like 20. Foo Fighters, the band, just got an insurance break this year. They just hit 25.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I haven't been to a live show in so long. I'm trying to think the last live show I've seen. Obviously, I've seen that come back. People have started to go back out to concerts, but it's like I haven't been to a live show in a long time. I'm really interested to see how football shakes out this year. People getting out to games and stuff.
Well, yeah, the baseball games have come back pretty strong.
Yeah, we were there. We did like a company outing.
Yeah,
a week ago. Yeah,
formed in 1994.
Okay, so 27 years.
Yep. Founded by former Nirvana drummer Dave Grohl as a one-man project following the dissolution of Nirvana.
Michael Cantrell says, have you heard their disco stuff? I'm assuming you're talking about the Foo Fighters?
I have not.
I didn't even know that was a thing, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm looking. That's interesting. Anyway.
And then you were talking about like you were going to go see the Austin City Limits concert series.
Think about that. Yeah. Which is a lot of the same bands as Lollapalooza. Come to find out, so yeah. I gotta admit, the lineups were not wonderful. The lineups were just not wonderful this year for any of them. For that one, for Bottle Rock, for Austin City Limits.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of what's happening is they're just throwing these things together just to get it together. I mean, up until May, Lollapalooza was not happening.
Yeah.
Like it was like they were doing some version of a video city walking tour where they had like old video they had taken up on buildings and stuff like that they were trying to work with Chicago to get revenue going for, because Chicago gets a lot of revenue out of it. But I mean,
that's an aggressive stance.
Yeah, it is.
That's an aggressive stance.
That's aggressive.
I don't have any data one way or another. That's aggressive.
Nope. Me neither.
Well, man, you want to tie a bow on it?
Let's do it. Hey. Let's do it. We went literally all the way around the world and back today with economics.
Holy moly.
It was not where I was intending to go, but I think it worked out pretty well.
I think it worked out really well. And I think it's a really good conversation to have. So
moral of the story, guys. Moral of the story is I don't see home values going down. I want to make sure that I'm very clear on that.
Correct.
Zero evidence of home values going down. Number one. Number two, I talk about that we should have talked about today with greater depth, and I just did an interview for WWJ on this yesterday. Today is the expiry of the foreclosure moratorium, which means that on Monday banks can start filing foreclosures.
Yeah,
start filing in court to take over properties. Now, and again, putting a fine point on this, foreclosures don't happen as an event; it's a process. And in Michigan, it's a very long process. So in Michigan, if you've missed 4 payments, now the bank's going to take you to court. That's going to take around 30 to 45 days. Once they have the deed turned over, it's then a 6-month redemption period in the state of Michigan before the bank can actually sell a clean deed. So they just sit on it.
Yeah.
From this moment to the moment that we're going to start seeing foreclosures trickle onto the market, it's going to be 7 to 10 months, which puts us all the way over into next spring. And what happens next spring? All the buyers come out and buy the houses. So all it's going to do is maybe provide a little pressure relief. And that's the best we're going to get. The other side of it is If there were going to be foreclosures, what comes before foreclosures? Short sales.
Mm-hmm.
And we have not seen a flood of short sales at all. At all. Like no uptick, like zero. Which means that what the banks and the federal government are doing between forbearance, beefing up their loss mitigation departments to work with people and keep them in the home, right? By restructuring their with additional forbearance. Because as the banks learned the lesson from the last down market, they don't want the houses. It's a losing proposition. It hammers their stock price. And at the end of the day, these are all publicly traded companies, and they want their stock prices high. That's the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're working really hard right now to keep people in homes. If someone who has missed payments or has not taken advantage of forbearance or is coming towards the end of a forbearance, because a lot of people will come to the end of forbearance in September and October, please reach out to your bank. They will actually work with you. I'm not saying every bank will. I don't know if the credit unions will. I don't. But I will say Chase, Bank of America, all the big boys are beefing up their departments because they don't want the homes back. They don't want to take them. And again, where I don't see home values going down. Next year, are we going to see appreciation slope to maybe 5 to 8%? Probably. But will it go negative? No. I don't see it. All right, that's all I got.
All right.
Soapbox over.
All right.
Let's get out of here.
We'll just talk more about foreclosures next week too.
There we go. We'll talk about it next week because I'm sure there'll be a bunch of articles and news headlines coming out this week on it.
There it is. All right, guys. Like always, we're humbled. We're grateful. All of our clients, all of you that hang out and listen. I don't know. We really, really, really think we're the luckiest people on earth. We get to help people and we get to guide them through a really stressful time and a large transaction for them and get paid. And I don't know. We're really humbled and grateful for all of our team members and all the families that we serve. And so we appreciate you guys. Have an amazing weekend and we'll see you next week.
Yep. Have fun, guys.
See ya.